Welcome to Soul Stories, where every tale touches the heart and inspires the soul. Ethan Knight had built an empire with cold precision. Every move, every word, every deal, calculated. He was the kind of CEO who never smiled for the cameras, never entertained gossip, and never mixed business with emotion. But for the first time in his career, he'd lost control of the narrative. It started with a single photograph, him leaving a charity gala, holding the small hand of his 5-year-old son, Oliver. The paparazzi had been lurking outside, waiting for any sign of weakness. The next morning, headlines exploded across every business magazine and gossip site. Billionaire CEO's secret life, single father unfit to lead his company. Rumors swirled like wildfire, stories about a mysterious nanny, a broken marriage, and an unstable home life. Investors began asking questions. His board grew nervous. The upcoming merger, worth billions, hung in the balance. Ethan had survived market crashes, corporate betrayals, and hostile takeovers, but this was personal. He sat in his sleek office, the skyline glittering behind him, while his PR manager nervously shuffled papers. "Sir," she said carefully, "the media is painting you as cold and irresponsible. We need a counter story, something that makes you look stable, grounded, family-oriented." He frowned. "And how do you suggest I do that? Adopt a dog?" She hesitated, then spoke the words that would change everything. "Get married, even if it's just for show. People love a redemption story, a single dad who found love again." Ethan's jaw tightened. Marriage was the last thing he wanted. His late wife's death had left a scar that time never healed. But as he looked at the trembling stock reports and the growing panic among his team, he realized he had no other choice. That evening, as rain tapped against the mansion windows, Ethan stood in the living room, watching Lily Adams read Oliver a bedtime story. She was gentle, patient, and sincere. Everything he wasn't. She had been more than a nanny to his son. She had become his comfort, his laughter, his safe place. When Oliver finally fell asleep, Ethan cleared his throat. "Lily, there's something I need to ask you." She turned, surprised by the seriousness in his tone. "Of course, sir. What is it?" He took a slow breath, his voice low but steady. "Lily, I need a wife. For 1 month. Pretend we're married, just until this blows over." Silence filled the room. Her eyes widened, disbelief flashing across her face. In that single moment, both of their lives changed, forever. At first, Lily thought Ethan was joking. The words sounded too absurd to be real. A marriage proposal from her boss, the cold and composed CEO of Knight Enterprises. She even laughed nervously, shaking her head. "You can't be serious, Mr. Knight, this isn't some movie." But Ethan didn't laugh. His expression was grave, eyes tired and voice low. "Lily, I wish it were a movie. But this is real. If this scandal ruins the merger, I could lose everything. And so could hundreds of families who work for me." The weight of his words settled in the air like fog. She thought of little Oliver, of the staff she'd come to know, of the boys' laughter filling the mansion halls. After a long silence, she finally whispered, "Just 1 month, right?" Ethan nodded. "Just 1 month." And so the act began. The following days were a whirlwind. Lawyers drew up fake marriage documents for the press. Stylists updated Lily's wardrobe, and PR agents rehearsed interviews with them. Soon, tabloids buzzed with headlines. "Ethan Knight marries longtime love, the nanny next door." The world believed what they saw, and what they saw was perfection. At charity events, Ethan held Lily's hand, guiding her through crowds of flashing cameras. She smiled nervously at the reporters, her natural grace winning hearts instantly. Every photograph of them looked effortlessly genuine, the powerful CEO and his gentle, loving wife. Inside the penthouse, things were different. The marble floors and cold walls that once echoed with silence now carried laughter and warmth. Lily decorated Oliver's room with drawings and paper stars. She made pancakes on Sunday mornings. She even convinced Ethan to sit for breakfast instead of eating at his desk. At first, he resisted, insisting that their arrangement was strictly professional. But somewhere between bedtime stories and candlelit dinners staged for the media, Ethan found himself lowering his guard. He started looking forward to her presence, the way she hummed while cleaning up, the way she smiled at his son, the way her kindness softened the air around them. But every night, When the cameras were gone and the house went quiet, Ethan reminded himself, it's not real. She wasn't really his wife. And yet, as he watched Lily tuck Oliver into bed, whispering softly, he couldn't help but wonder, what if pretending was the only way he'd ever feel something real again? The days that followed felt strangely different, softer, warmer, and more confusing than either of them expected. What had started as a business arrangement, an act for the cameras, was slowly turning into something they couldn't quite label. The world still believed their marriage was real, and somewhere along the way they started believing it too. Ethan Knight, the man once known for his stoic silence, began to change in small but undeniable ways. He found himself staying home longer in the mornings just to share breakfast with Lily and Oliver. He laughed, genuinely laughed, when Lily teased him about his terrible pancake flipping skills. He started walking his son to school instead of sending the driver, and every time Lily waved goodbye from the doorway, something inside him felt right. But it wasn't just Ethan who was changing. Lily too felt her heart betraying her logic. Every time she saw Ethan kneel to tie Oliver's shoelaces or tuck him into bed, her chest tightened with a warmth she didn't understand. This wasn't supposed to happen. She was supposed to play a role, a wife in name only. Yet the way Ethan's gaze softened when he looked at her made pretending nearly impossible. Then came the night of the charity gala. It was the biggest event of the season. Elegant gowns, flashing cameras, and the city's elite watching their every move. Lily's heart pounded as she stood beside Ethan on the red carpet, lights bursting around them like fireworks. She wore a flowing emerald green gown, her hair swept up neatly, while Ethan looked devastatingly handsome in a black tuxedo. Together they looked picture perfect, the ideal couple. But halfway up the marble steps, Lily's heel caught the edge of her dress. She stumbled forward, a soft gasp escaping her lips. Before she could fall, Ethan's arm wrapped firmly around her waist, pulling her close. The world seemed to stop. Cameras clicked furiously, flashes exploding, yet for that one heartbeat, it was only them. "You okay?" he murmured, his face inches from hers. Her heart raced wildly. "Yes, but I think we're making this too real." He smiled faintly, his breath brushing against her ear. "Maybe real isn't so bad." She tried to laugh it off, but her pulse wouldn't settle, because deep down she knew something had become real. And as they walked into the ballroom, his hand still resting gently at the small of her back, she realized with quiet dread and secret joy, the line between pretend and truth had already vanished. The month slipped away faster than either of them had expected. What started as a carefully constructed illusion had turned into a rhythm of real moments. Breakfast together, late-night laughter, quiet conversations after Oliver fell asleep. And then, before they knew it, the contract was over. The media storm had finally calmed. The company's image was spotless again. The merger had gone through flawlessly, and Ethan Knight's reputation had not only survived, it had flourished. Investors called him a changed man, praising his new family values. Every photo of him, Lily, and Oliver smiling together painted the picture of a perfect home. But behind closed doors, reality was much quieter and much heavier. The last morning of their agreement, Lily stood in the bedroom, folding her clothes into a small suitcase. The room that had once felt too big, too cold, now felt impossibly small, every corner carrying a memory. The scent of coffee he made for her, the laughter they'd shared over Oliver's bedtime stories, the warmth that had filled the spaces where loneliness used to live. Ethan stood in the doorway, hands in his pockets, watching her. There was a strange ache in his chest, something he couldn't quite name. For years his heart had been buried beneath walls of control and logic. But now, watching her prepare to leave, he felt something break quietly inside. "You don't have to rush," he said finally, his voice softer than she'd ever heard it. Lily smiled faintly, blinking back tears. "It was supposed to be 1 month, Ethan. We both agreed." He stepped closer, the sound of his shoes echoing lightly on the wooden floor. "Yes," he admitted, "we did. But somewhere along the way, it stopped feeling like an act." Her hands froze over the suitcase. Slowly, she turned to face him. "This was supposed to be fake," he continued, his voice thick with emotion. a business move. But somewhere between the late nights, the laughter, and the way you care for Oliver, it became the most real thing in my life. Lily's eyes shimmered, her lips trembling. "Don't say that if you don't mean it." He took another step forward, closing the distance between them. "I've spent my whole life pretending I didn't need anyone, but I can't pretend that anymore." For a long moment, silence filled the room, only their hearts speaking, loud and clear. Then slowly, Lily reached out and took his hand. And in that quiet, fragile moment, the pretend marriage, born out of necessity, became something beautifully true.